Hey everybody, it's Mr. Winkle, and today I am not talking about life science, but I do have a really cool at-home experiment that you can try out. It involves something called polymers. And polymers, the word polymer, actually is made out of two Greek words, palou and meros, which actually means many shares or many parts. So these are molecules that are made out of many repeating parts and usually make really, really long molecules. And a lot of the polymers that we know best are plastics. And there are 7 different kinds of plastics out there. You guys probably have seen the recycling triangles like this with a number in the middle. Number 1 are called the PET plastics, and that's short for polyethylene terephthalate, which are like your fizzy drink bottles. Number 2 would be the HDPE, which is high density polyethylene. Those would be kind of a harder plastic, kind of like milk bottles or dish detergent kind of bottles. Plastic number 3 is something called PVC, which is polyvinyl chloride. Those make things like food trays, or if you've ever been to like Home Depot, those big white plastic pipes you see are made out of polyvinyl chloride. Plastic number 4 is called LDPE, which is low density polyethylene. Those make a lot of our plastic bags, you know, those really thin bags you get at the grocery store, get at Target. That's usually your number 4. Your number 5 is called polypropylene. Though that's kind of a soft plastic, like you might get like margarine in and those kinds of things. And number 6 is PS, which is polystyrene, which we often know as styrofoam. It also makes a lot of really kind of crunchy plastics that they use for packaging. And then plastic number 7 is kind of everything else that doesn't fit into one of those groups. So for our experiment today, what you need is a number 6 plastic. And I have one here. And if you look really carefully, it's going to be hard to see on the camera, but if you look inside the triangle, you can see a number, and this one happens to be a 6. This is kind of a really kind of a crinkly plastic, and we're going to do something kind of cool with this based on the way that this plastic is made. Now, we talked about polymers are really long molecules, and what we can do with this molecule has to do with the way that this is manufactured. So if we pretend that these rubber bands are these really long polymer molecules, the way that this plastic is made is it's called extrusion, which means they heat it up and then they stretch it out. And so if you imagine that this plastic is heated so it's flexible, and then they stretch out those molecules like this, and then they let it cool down, the molecules are going to be stretched out in a hardened state like this. However, what happens when we heat them up again is they want to go back to their original shape, and they're going to do this. And so we're going to take advantage of that property of this plastic, and we're going to make something called Shrinky Dinks. Now, Shrinky Dinks were invented in 1973 and were a big hit in the 1980s back when I was a kid. And you can still buy them in stores, but why should you do that when you can make them at home? So let's check out how to make some homemade Shrinky Dinks. So once you have your number 6 piece of plastic like this, what you can do is you can cut it out. You want a nice flat piece. So I'm going to use this top of this pie crust tray, and I'm just going to cut out the flat part here because the curvy part is going to be hard to work with. And you can hear that it's kind of crunchy. So it's kind of that real brittly kind of crunchy plastic. So now I've got a nice flat piece like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this into a couple smaller pieces, because I want to make a couple small little projects out of this. So I'm going to cut this center little symbol out here. I'll set that aside, and I'll just make a couple sort of pie-shaped wedges here. All right, so I've just got a couple flat pieces of this number 6 plastic now, And what you can do is you can either use Sharpies, or if you have a little bit of sandpaper, you can really lightly sand this plastic to roughen it up a little bit, just like I'm doing here. And if you use sandpaper to roughen up one side of it, it gets a little bit kind of frosty looking like this. But now what you can do is you can use colored pencils to color on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decorate up a couple of my pieces of plastic here, and then we'll show you what we're going to do next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those 3 little pieces of plastic that I made, and I'm going to put them onto a cookie sheet like this. So I've got that little round center design from the middle of the plastic thing. I've got my little Mr. Winkle one that I did with colored pencil, and I've got my Science Rules one that I did with Sharpie pen. And so I'm just going to lay these out flat onto a cookie sheet. I've got my oven set for 350 degrees. Now I know that we usually use Celsius when we talk about science, but in this case we're talking Fahrenheit. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop these in the oven for just a very, very short amount of time. You're going to have to watch them to make sure that they don't get too shrinky dinked, because they'll actually start to catch on fire. So I'm going to put a hot mitt on here. That's very, very important because it's going to be hot. I'm going to open up the oven. I'm going to put these in the oven here, and we'll watch through the oven window. Actually, I'm going to put these on a different shelf so we can see just a little bit better. So we'll check these out through the oven window here, and hopefully we'll see some shrinky happen pretty quickly. All right, so here is our end result. These got a little bit kind of curvy, so you have to experiment a little bit, but here is Mr. Winkle, a lot smaller than we started off with. Here is that center decoration that I cut out of the middle of that pie plate. And then here is our little Science Rules guy right here. And you can see that this plastic has gotten a lot thicker and also a lot smaller because the plastic shrunk back to its original conformation. So it might take a little practice to get these totally flat, but definitely does work if you make some homemade Shrinky Dinks. So this is Mr. Winkle signing off, and don't forget, when you take them out of the oven, use the hot mitt or else it's going to be really hot. We'll see you guys later.